Welcome aboard, Dirty 11, the lead in a flight of two T-55 Tyros on this rainy evening off the Virginia coast. The weather tonight is reported at 300-foot ceilings and about 3/4 mile, or 4,500 feet, horizontal visibility, putting tonight's recovery squarely in the Case 3 category. First thing we're going to have to do is enter the Marshal stack, so let's take a look at the approach plate for how to do that. Before beginning, if the approach plate looks confusing to you, I've made a video that describes exactly how to read it, so go take a look at that if you haven't already. Good to go? Great. As you can see, the Marshal stack for Case 3 is referenced off of the final bearing radial. All that means is that the reference point, which is also marked on the plate as the IAF, is aligned with the ILS. The distance and altitude from the carrier is assigned by the Marshal controller, with the closest Marshal stack being at 21 DME, or 21 miles, and 6,000 feet. Each stack after that is separated by 1 DME and 1,000 feet. The entire flight marshals together in a 2G left-hand bank at 350 knots. This ensures good spacing between aircraft. Now, let's take a look at how to check in with the Marshal controller to receive your Marshal stack clearance, starting with the switch over to Marshal frequency. 2, push Marshal 132.4, stand by for check-in.
2.
Dirty flight check-in on Marshal, Dirty 11.
Dirty 12.
Wolverine Marshal, dirty flight of 2 Tyros is with you 24 miles to the southwest, inbound low state 3.3.
Dirty flight of 2 T-55s, Case 3 recovery, CV1 approach, VRC 000, Marshal on the 350 radial, 21 DME Angels 6, final bearing 350, over.
Alright, Marshal on the 350 radial, 21 DME, Angels 6, Dirty 11. Okay, let's break that check-in down. After pushing the flight over to Marshal frequency and verifying that everyone is there, Dirty 11 makes the inbound call. In the following order, he reports the number and type of aircraft in the flight's position, their intentions, and the fuel state of the lowest aircraft in the flight. Marshal replies with the following: the standard recovery introduction with the recovery case and carrier BRC, which is direction of carrier movement, the assigned Marshal radial, which for Case 3 is identical to the final bearing, the Marshal DME, and the Marshal Angels, and then the final bearing of the carrier. The pilot only needs to read back the Marshal information. With the check-in done, we know where to marshal and we can start talking about the approach. The Case 3 approach may seem complicated, but in reality it's quite simple. Essentially, what we're doing is moving between 5 different reference points, or fixes, at defined speeds and altitudes, all while staying lined up with the ILS horizontally. The first fix in our approach is the initial approach fix, or IAF. It is identical in position to your Marshal point, and it indicates where you start the approach from. After passing the IAF, we reduce our speed to 300 knots and begin descending towards 1,200 feet. Our next fix is labeled at ICLS 10, which tells us it's 10 DME from the carrier. When crossing that fix, we want to be at or above 1,200 feet, and after we cross it, we slow down to 250 knots. The next fix, our intermediate fix, is at 6 DME. It's special because of that radar label. That label tells us that Marshal control will let us know when we reach it, and that's important because it's the point where we get handed off to the paddles controller, but you'll see all about that later. After dropping down to 200 knots, we continue at 1,200 feet all the way up to the final approach fix, labeled FAF, at 3 DME. The Maltese cross symbol indicates that this is the last fix in our approach before we reach the carrier, and the Thunderbolt arrow indicates the altitude we should intercept the glide slope at, which is 1,200 feet. After passing that fix, we slow down to our on-speed AOA and start to follow the ILS's horizontal bar down to our minimums, which are down here. If your ILS works, you're flying the SICLS approach, so let's look at those minimums. Our decision altitude, which is the leftmost number, is listed here at 278 feet. This means that we'll descend under instruments all the way down to 278 feet, then look outside. If we see the carrier, we proceed with the landing. Otherwise, we have to go around. Looks like we're arriving at the Marshal stack now, so let's listen into those comms. Marshal, dirty flight is established Angels 6, states 3.2.
Copy established. Dirty flight, clear case 3 recovery.
Cleared case 3 recovery, dirty flight. We will start commencing on the next round. So we've told Marshal that we've arrived at our assigned stack, and he's cleared us to begin the recovery. We already started the left-hand Marshal turn, so we can't go right away. Remember, you can only begin the approach from the IAF. We'll have to wait until we're back around, heading inbound towards the carrier, before we can start breaking off aircraft. We've already briefed that Dash 2 will break off first, so when we reach the IAF, he will commence his approach, and we'll go around for one more loop in the hold before beginning ours. Let's skip to when 2's breaking off.
See you on deck.
See you.
Dirty 1-2 commencing 3.1.
Now that 2's off our wing, we'll finish up our turn in the stack and then break off ourselves. Notice how we're holding 350 knots and 2 Gs in this turn. Feel free to use autopilots to help out in the Marshal, and throughout the entire case 3 approach for that matter, as it could take a good amount of load off of you, allowing you to focus on other parts of the approach. Let's skip to when we reach our IAF and commence. Dirty 1-1 commencing 3.1. Okay, immediately after commencing, we're going to begin our descent down to 1,200 feet, and we're rolling our power back to 300 knots. Our next call coming up is going to be platform when we pass through 5,000 feet. Dirty 1-1 platform. Notice how I started off the approach left of centerline, now I'm right of centerline. That's okay, as long as I'm working to fight for that center line on the ILS, trying to center that horizontal needle on the ILS. Okay, skipping ahead a little, you'll notice that we are leveling off at 1,200 feet a little bit early, a little bit before that 10 DME fix. We're at about 12 DME now, and that's okay. The 10 DME fix says you can be at or above 1,200, so being at 1,200 at 10 DME is just fine. The big thing is we are just keeping that power at 300 knots until we reach 10 DME. Okay, so we just reached 10 DME, and you can see me changing the speed autopilot, dropping the speed down to 250 knots. I'm just going to let these next 4 miles between your 10 and 6 DME fix play out in real time. This is a great time to make sure your hook is down, make sure your ILS is correct, make sure that everything in the plane is configured for landing, of course, except for your flaps and your landing gear, because you're going to drop those at the end. Okay, our next major milestone is at 6 DME, remember that radar fix. Marshal's going to tell us that we are reaching the final radar contact at 6 miles, and he's going to ask us to report needles. All we do is we report the horizontal and vertical positions of our needles. So if we're flying the approach correctly, all we say is needles up and on.
30-1-1, Marshal, final radar contact 6 miles, say needle.
Dirty 1-1 up and on.
Concur, fly needles, paddle over to 227.5, have a good evening.
Over to 2275, see ya, Dirty 1-1. Okay, Marshal just told us to contact paddles, so we're going to switch to his frequency, do a quick check-in, and make sure to drop to 200 knots. Paddles, Dirty 1-1 is with you.
Landing gear. Landing gear.
30-1-1, paddles, has you loud there.
The most important thing to remember in this time, from 6 to 3 DME, is that you need to maintain 1,200 feet. A lot of people will start descending early, and that puts them in a bad spot. As soon as that horizontal glide slope bar hits the center, that's our cue to drop to on speed and start descending.
Delta 1-1, approaching glide path.
Okay, we're starting our descent. We're on our final approach now. So we are going to try and keep that ILS centered, and we're going to try and stay right on our E-bracket speed, just like a Case 1, except you can't see the carrier. You're only going to have about 90 seconds on this approach phase, so I'm just going to let it play out with all the comms.
Delta 1-1, showing you a little below glide slope, slight right line up.
Delta 1-1, slightly low, slight right flat up. Delta 1-1, 3/4 of a mile, call the bolt.
Delta 1-1 Clara.
Roger, Clara, you're on center line, on slope.
Delta 1-1 Tyro Ball 3.0.
Roger, bolt, fly the bolt, come right flat up, you're a little high. On slope, approaching center line. Line up, on slope, come a little left now. Little power. 3-wire, welcome home.
And there you go, another beautiful 3-wire from yours truly, CAG Freedomplaza, in fact, the only wire that he can catch. But I understand that some of you guys might bolter or even go for a missed approach if you pass minimum. So let's take a look at what happens if you have to go missed. So the bolter Waveoff procedure on the Case 3 is listed in 3 places. The first one is on the top, and it's written out what you should do. The second one is right on the approach plate in the dashed line, indicating where you need to turn. And the third place is on the bottom in those 4 boxes. So let's take a look. The written procedure is the most specific, so we'll look at that. It says a climb out to 1,200 feet and 250 knots until 4 DME, then a left turn to the final bearing reciprocal, and base when instructed. If no comms, you'll go base at 6 DME. So let's take a look at that in action.
Power. Power. Wave off, wave off, wave off. Flight published pattern, contact Marshal 132.4.
Landing gear.
Flight published over to Marshal 32.4, see ya.
Landing gear.
Notice that immediately after that wave-off call, we climbed up to 1,200 feet and 250 knots. We pushed afterburner power for that, and we are on the final bearing heading, so 350. Marshal, Dirty 1-1 is with you on the bolter.
31-1 Marshal, Lima Charlie, fly the published pattern, I will clear you for base.
Fly the published, you'll call my base, 31. Okay, so we just checked in with Marshal, and he said to fly the published, and then he will call our base. So fly the published just means continue flying the misapproach procedure, which has a straight and level out to 4 DME, and then a left turn to the final bearing reciprocal. In this case, the reciprocal of 350 is 170, so at 4 miles we'll turn left. The other thing he said is, I'll call your base. That's just establishing that he is in control of you, and he will tell you when to turn base, as opposed to the no communications procedure, in which you turn base at 6 DME. So after this, you would just wait for Marshal to call your base, you'd call that you're reestablished, and then continue on the approach where you left off. Well, that's about it for this tutorial. Hopefully now you should be able to fly the Case 3 pretty well, and avoid an embarrassing bolter like this guy. Jeez, could not be me. Just a quick reminder that if you have any questions, feel free to ask any instructors. The recovery manual is a great tool as well. It has everything written out in a pretty deep detail, so make sure you're looking at that. And whenever you're flying these approaches, make sure you've got the most up-to-date version of the approach plate from that resources page. See you in the air.